In a game stacked with magic users of various spell lists and utility, does Hanneman stand a chance in comparison? When asked what people thought of Hanneman, a large majority of people said that he's just a worse version of Lysithea. He's extremely slow, and he's only good for Meteor. While I did get some solid defenses for him, the gassed Twitter jury seemed to have concluded that he's not worth the time. I've always been a fan of older characters in the cast. Yoder, Mulder, Nyx, Garrick, and most recently, Hanneman. I don't think Hanneman's character needs defending like Cyril did, but when I see that epic 9k views on that support video that Collector Togami made, I think some spotlight and appreciation is definitely in order. So first, let's break down his unit performance, just like before. Hanneman is recruitable once you beat Chapter 8, but his level 1 base stats are the following. 25 HP, 6 strength, 10 magic, 6 dexterity and speed, 4 luck, 5 defense, 7 resistance, and 5 charm. His growths are 40 HP, 30 strength, 55 magic, 45 dexterity, 20 speed, 35 luck, 25 defense, 40 res, and 35 charm. Of course, he's going to auto level depending on what month you recruit him in, but regardless of what happens, he will definitely have massive magic, dexterity, and resistance. The bad standout being his epic 20% speed growth and 25 defense growth. Hanneman is a magical nuke, can tank magical damage, but is going to be doubled by nearly everything and folds like paper to physical damage. That said, while it's easy to look at Hanneman and go, oh my god, his speed is so bad, speed is so important, it's the best stat, he sucks now, speed really doesn't matter that much to mages. Considering that most combat mages have middling or shaky speed growths, and below average to actual non-existent strength growths, they are actually significantly impacted by the attack speed formula in 3 houses. With the weight of the more powerful tomes being unforgivably heavy, and maddening mode enemies usually having high enough attack speed where doubling is completely out of the question for mages, Hanneman is going to be doubled like most other technically faster mages in the game. So in Hanneman's defense, while his speed is definitely awful, faster mages will also be doubled as well. On a positive, Hanneman has some unique assets that no other combat mage has in the game. With C-rank proficiency in bows, Hanneman has some useful combat arts early on. He comes with Schism Shot, which debuffs enemy res by 5 if it hits, and he also learns Ward Arrow at A, which is basically silence for a turn except in a combat art. But this also lets him have access to the magic bow pretty early, which is thankfully only C rank, can be forged from a steel bow and refined to have 3 range. With Rally Magic as his personal skill, he has decent buffs and debuffs, but more importantly, he comes with a very powerful spell list. Wind at D, Sagittae at C, Thoron at B, Ragnarok at A, and Meteor at A+. He will get Thoron at very little investment since he usually starts with C+ in magic, meaning he's going to be rocking +3 range pretty early. But he also gets Ragnarok at A, which is the second most powerful combat spell in the game, for reason at least, and is quite accurate as well, which has a handy use as a Gambit boost support because the range is 10. Combined with his high base magic, excellent growth, which will scale up to 65 through his growth modifiers, and actually an insanely good spell list, Hanneman can completely delete units in a single blow once you start leveling him up and he picks up his magic. It also helps that he starts as a mage, which means he doesn't need to go backwards for Fiendish Blow, although you might want to get +2 magic through Monk. In a vacuum, Hanneman does his job very well. Hell, he can even make for a great Dark Knight, as he's already on the way with a proficiency in riding. But if that's the case, where does the ire about his unit performance come from? It's the way in which he usually stacks up compared to the other combat mages in the game, which makes him at worst a complete afterthought, and at best, a budget Lysithea. Hanneman might arguably be the second best nuke in the game, or first if you're talking to some people. But he legit has garbage utility compared to other mages. His unique faith spells are Recover and Ward. Ward isn't that bad, but he doesn't have any staple support spells like Silence or Physic or Restore or Fortify. No repositionals like Rescue or Warp. If you're a kind of person who puts any sort of value on these spells, then Hanneman is sucking up a vital deployment spot for raw damage. Yes, he has more firepower than like the cast. Marianne, Annette, and Linhardt might have similar magic growths, but that's where his black magic list comes in. Annette's Excalibur or Marianne's Fimbulvetter just do not compare to Ragnarok and Meteor for raw damage. But what they have are uses outside of damage. Linhardt has Warp and Physic, Marianne has Silence and Physic, Annette is a rally bot and has way more flexibility as a unit to the point where you can even make her a Wyvern Lord and make use of Crusher and Lightning Axe. Lysithea smacks enemies hard like Hanneman does, but she also has fricking Luna and Hades, oh, and Physic and Warp. Are you seeing the trend here? Hanneman isn't outclassing anyone in rally support or faith, so there's always an opportunity cost associated with Hanneman. Can you make him work? Yeah. I'm not saying you can't at all. He is a mage, and mages are good in this game. If you aren't hurting for utility and just want to straight up delete people, he will do your job. Nuking is all about getting as much damage in one hit as possible, and because of his high magic combined with high dexterity, range, Ragnarok, he is more consistent at the role, especially in the late game, than anyone else will be, except for Lysithea for the most part. As maddening mode gets harder and harder to nuke enemies, his stock may even increase as well. So all in all, his value will depend on how important nuking enemies are to you and your team makeup. The reason he's considered low, quote-unquote, tier, or if you're talking to some people, the worst mage in the game, is because he just has no faith utility. If he had Physic instead of Recover, even in Closing Shot instead of Ward Arrow, if he had Rescue or Warp over Bernadetta or Manuela respectively, because with his great magic, he would do a lot more with those spells than they would. He would probably become... No, he would become one of the best mages in the game if he had these kind of utility spells. And before you say it, and maybe you already did in the comments, yes, War Master Hanneman is a thing. Quick Riposte would actually solve his speed issues because it straight up just gives +4 AS more than the enemy. Throw on some Aura Knuckles, and now you're memeing with Dr. Punchman. While he's a quote-unquote low-tier mage, I gotta say, as a character, completely opposite. He's definitely not negatively judged like Cyril is, but it's not like a 55-year-old guy is turning heads versus someone like Felix. There are 3 main characteristics that are on display in his supports. The first being his ultimate end goal in Crestology, his desire to help others, and his, at times, poor social skills. Hanneman is an incredibly smart man with a desire to help others to a fault. He has a knack for giving unwarranted and unsolicited advice, like in the case with Gilbert and Manuela. The latter which is part of an ongoing and hilarious lover's quarrel between the two.
You are so sensitive to ill will from others, yet you let your own emotions run wild.
Just because you keep your emotions bottled up behind your stupid stony face, well, it doesn't mean everyone else has to do the same. Stop telling everyone how to behave, Hanneman. It will make you and the rest of us much happier.
His extreme dedication for success in Crestology characterizes him as unempathetic and sometimes exploitative, as seen with his Byleth and Lysithea supports. It's easier to describe him as someone who gets way too carried away in his research.
Pardon my excitement. I simply cannot let the opportunity to study such a miraculous subject go to waste. Your tale may contain valuable information.
You are utterly lacking in empathy. You know that? Even if you spent your entire life observing me, you'd never understand my feelings and all I've been through. Now, if you'll excuse me.
I fear I may have made a misstep. I have no desire to trouble her, yet my research...
Despite his overly forward and kind of weird approach to Lysithea, Hanneman comes to realize the error of his behavior, apologizes, and vows to find a cure to remove one of the 2 crests residing inside of her, expanding her life expectancy as normal.
The question of whether your lifespan can be restored is entirely within the scope of my research.
Could you really do that?
It is difficult to say for sure, but as long as the possibility exists, I will continue to seek it. Lysithea, let me ask you once more. Will you assist me in my research?
A once selfish pursuit of science becomes a noble pursuit of knowledge. While at times socially awkward and results-driven, Hanneman does want to see his peers and students succeed and be happy in life. This is generally his role as a foil for most characters, like guiding Annette and Linhardt on the right path, but most notably, challenging Hubert to reconsider his disdain for his father.
Do you think such a man would so easily betray his emperor, even if led astray by the Prime Minister?
Clearly, yes. That's exactly what he did. He played a large part in the assault on the palace, personally spearheaded the Emperor's capture. The thought of those treacherous arms reaching out for Her Majesty. It is truly upsetting.
Agreed. Facts are facts. The palace walls are stuffed with countless truths, all of them concealed by the stones and mortar of fact. I hoped you would have the capacity to see the unfettered truth, but I fear that where your father is concerned, your eyes may see only what you wish them to see.
I'll take that under advisement.
Feel free to ignore me. I know full well I have my own blind spots. It's just, I believe your father had something he was trying to protect. Bearing a stain on his honor, being purged by his own son, all in the name of protection. I speak from knowledge, as someone who failed to protect something I held dear.
Everything goes back to Crestology and the pursuit of knowledge. Why does he dedicate himself so hard to this field? Hanneman was a former imperial noble born with a minor crest of Indek. His family, while not the biggest and most significant, had a very strong bloodline, and because of the abundance of crests in his family, it sparked his passion for Crestology at an early age. With enough time and effort, he became head researcher for the Empire and earned the title Father of Crestology, and despite the fame and the resources from being in the Empire's lead in this field, he left it all behind for Garrick Mach.
Your father bore a major crest, and both you and your grandfather inherited minor crests. Your sister was born without one, but as the daughter of a family in which crests are prevalent, others saw potential in her. That's why she was married off to a certain noble whose influence was waning. He was undoubtedly desperate for power. But no matter how many children she bore him, none manifested a crest. She fell from her husband's favor and was mistreated, ultimately leading to...
As an up-and-coming crest scholar at the time, I knew only despair. What was the use of my research if I could not even save my own sister?
That's why you abandoned your position in the Empire and came to Garrick Mach.
My sister is far from the only victim. Many noblemen have done the same to their own wives, and I despise them for it. So my quest began. I would unlock the secrets of crests, make them available to any who desired. If I achieved my goal, the nobility would be rendered obsolete, and my sister could finally rest peacefully.
Hanneman's ultimate dream is that of social change. To create a world which tears away at the very idea of how nobility is defined in Fodlan. A world where no more victims of circumstance, like his sister was, would be abused for a chance at power. Should anyone desire a crest, they would be accessible, noble or not. For Hanneman, nobility is not a divine right to rule, which in practice is what nobility has unfortunately become in Fodlan. It is, instead, how he always viewed nobility to be.
Though I have abandoned my position, in my mind it was to pursue what I consider to be a truly noble pursuit, that of knowledge.
Even if Edelgard's goal is to destroy divinity, and consequently nobility through divinity, Hanneman will still support her. Not only will he default join the Empire, but his vision of change matches that of hers. There is a key distinction though. Where Edelgard's path to change is violent and destructive, Hanneman's is long-term and peaceful. Only a handful of people in this world have the ambition and talent to be capable of such goals. Edelgard seeks change through war. Dimitri seeks change through peace. Claude seeks change through globalization. Hanneman seeks change through science. In this perspective, Hanneman's value to the world is incredibly important, and in his endings, his magical tools are even endorsed by Rhea herself. If the writers wanted to, Hanneman is a character that can justifiably have his own spin-off. His unique and very classy take on nobility is a breath of fresh air in a world where nobility is viewed as incredibly corrupt for the most part. He's a man of incredibly firm character. It's enough to sweep Dorothea off her feet. By the way, way to go, you old fox! And I really hope that now you gain a better appreciation for how enriching and refreshing this old dude is.